Well, hi there, Cass.
Hello, Father Fish. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm
Nice.
doing well. Thank you.
Yeah, how are you doing? You've been sick and you've been doing kid stuff and just all sorts of things happening in your life.
I've been more sore than sick. Maybe that got me run down, and yeah, I ended up taking my son to the doctor, but I think it's mostly allergy stuff and maybe a mild virus that we caught from just being run down and doing too much.
Yeah, a little bit of cold weather too.
Yeah.
We've had a little bit of cold weather here in Florida, and we don't like that very much.
Except my kids have been wanting to play outside in it, and I'm like, I'll sit in the car while you guys play because it's too cold for me to sit there. I enjoyed it. The kids love it.
So who else here? Fantastic Fish. I haven't seen Fantastic Fish. Well, you know what I need to do? Right now, what I'm thinking about it is I need to get on YouTube so I can pass out some wrenches. We got a bunch of new people that have been plugging in here.
Now we need someone to figure out the problem with my wrench. That would be nice.
Wouldn't it ever? That's strange as can be, isn't it?
Now we need someone to figure out the problem with my wrench. That would be nice. I've got cat hair and stuff. It likes to cling to me. I'm getting to the point where I'm tired of animals.
I had a friend called last night and offered to bring a cat over today called Mrs. Butterworth. Apparently, it's a big fat female cat that everybody loves. She's at a shelter. Anyway, they're supposed to bring her over today. Really? They thought she would make a good shop cat. So we'll see. I'm certainly open to the option. That could be fun.
That would be nice. And you'd be saving a life.
Right, like that.
Do you know how old the cat is?
No, I don't know a thing about it.
Hopefully she's not too old. My cat just keeps getting fatter. My Marshall.
Well, I think that's the story of this one, near as I can tell.
Let's see. Kittens, and now he eats. I already try to control how much he eats, and somehow he's getting fatter.
Let's see. Roman Sharrock. Hello, Roman. Fantastic Fish. Friends.
Ian Aqua.
He's new. Bottom Dwellers Aquatics, also new. Harsh Patel is new.
All right.
Let's see. Harsh Patel says a bunch of things here. I got a 180-gallon tank with 110 pounds of ceramic rings in my sump. Is that good? Do I need more? Probably don't need more. And yes, it's fine. It's a way to build a bacteria, a nitrifying bacteria foundation on those rings. That's fine. What do you have for a substrate in your tank? That's what I'm really interested in knowing.
He says 3 inches of river gravel just below that.
Oh, there it is. I see. 3 inches river gravel as substrate. That's interesting. I like river gravel. It's a really pretty substrate. 120-gallon tank.
He says it's
Tell
one.
you what I would do. I would add another inch or two of river gravel. Make it 4 to 5 inches deep. 3 inches is not deep enough for it to really be anaerobic. It's going to become just a waste trap and will foul. If you add another couple of inches, 5 inches total for what amounts to gravel,
Yeah.
then you can start getting some anaerobics at the bottom, and that'll begin breaking down waste and actually dealing with it. So you won't simply be maintaining an open sewer.
Yeah.
With what you have now, you've really got an open sewer. If you add another inch or two of river gravel, you'll get it deep enough that it'll start building mold in the bottom, and that'll start deteriorating. You'll get, in other words, an anaerobic layer, and the water won't be able to flow through the whole thing so easily.
You know what?
Now what?
That's what I was told to do by a storekeeper when I first got my very first aquarium. He said the deeper the better, and to do at least 4 inches of gravel.
Yeah, that's right. Most people do like an inch or two of gravel, and all they wind up with is a mess that has to be cleaned all the time because it simply becomes a trap for waste. And the waste sits there and deteriorates. It basically rots and will foul the water. And if you don't do something about it routinely, it'll foul the water and you'll wind up with a dead tank.
Yeah. I think
That's
that's
where
also
people
why
fail.
I never got high nitrates like in that aquarium. Seemed to help a
That's
lot.
why people fail because they do exactly that. They put an inch of gravel in there because that's what's included in their kit. They feed 2 or 3 times a day because that's what the little can of food says to do. And in a matter of a month, their fish are sick and dying. In a matter of 2 months, everything is gone. And if they still have a heart for it, they'll try to do it again. They do the same thing they did before and get the same result.
Yeah.
And by then they either give up or start looking around to try to figure out a better way to do it. And that's when they find Father Fish.
So he said did you see his stocking? What the fish he has? He has 50.
No.
So he said he has 50 rummy nose and 60 cardinal tetras and
Wow.
still stream loaches.
So you really need to maintain a pristine tank. I mean, those are fish that are highly susceptible to bacterial infection. And you've got all the makings for bacterial infection in that relatively shallow, essentially gravel substrate. You keep going the way you're going, and in a month to 2 months, you're going to start losing fish. There are a couple of things you can do about it. You can add sand and sift the sand down in it, put it in, and then use a stick or a prod or your hand and sift it so that the sand gets down in that substrate, gets down in that gravel. It won't be as visible, but it'll form a layer at the bottom that will allow the detritus to get trapped and separated from the water column. That's one fix. That's a little more involved. What I would do immediately is add, as I suggested, 1 to 2 more inches of gravel. In a big tank like that, it's not going to hurt to do that. visually. It won't be a problem. But ultimately, you probably ought to do both. You probably ought to put sand in there. If you like the look of the river gravel, which I do, I think it's beautiful. Um, Sift it in. Just put it on top and move it a little. Sift it so it gets down in there. It'll go. The sand will go right down into the gravel, and it'll go all the way to the bottom. You got a relatively new tank, so you can get away with that. Here, keep in mind that getting rid of ammonia is not the only thing you need to do to have a healthy tank. Ammonia is only one of the elements that you're dealing with in terms of waste in the tank. It's an important one, but it's not the only one. Um, the bio balls or ceramic rings you have, all they're really capable of doing is building up nitrifying bacteria, which will control ammonia. And that's a good thing. That'll help to maintain a stable pH. It'll it'll uh, it'll make the tank healthier. It'll keep ammonia from spiking. But that's not the only thing you need to do. You also need to control the waste, the detritus. And the way you control that is by creating enough substrate for it to be able to penetrate into that substrate and break down. If it doesn't break down, it simply builds up and gets to the point where you're siphoning detritus out of your tank all the time, and winding up with bacteria blossoms because you've got excessive food and excessive waste that's going into that substrate and rotting. It's not breaking down, it's not deteriorating, it is, or at least not in a healthy way. It's being attacked by bacteria because you don't have other living matter in there. You don't have a balanced environment. It rots, deteriorates. You wind up having to clean it all the time, having to go in there and siphon it out once a month or so, going through that kind of rigmarole routinely. It's not a way to have a healthy, balanced tank. So try those two things. If you don't want to break the tank down, and I can appreciate you don't want to. Um, I would add sand first, try to sift it down in there, and then put some more of that river gravel on top of it. That'll give you all of the benefits that you possibly can have at this point. And then leave it alone. Don't get in there and mess around with it. Don't start stirring, trying to clean it and all this stuff. Leave it alone. Once you have an anaerobic layer, a deep layer where the waste can get down in it and break down, you don't want to disturb that. You want to let that do its thing. Let it be the machine that actually converts waste to nutrition for your plants. That's the other thing you need to do then, is if you don't have plants in your tank, add plants to your tank and start planting it out substantially. Do plants that are easy to grow at first. Don't go out and spend $500 on buse. It probably won't survive because you don't have enough of a nutritional base in there for it to be able to survive. But get plants like Anacharis.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about plants.
Yeah, Anacharis. You can do Anubias and Java Fern. They're wonderful. They're nice. They take nutrition out of the water column. Do the Vallisnerias, Amazon swords. Amazon sword is always a great plant to have in a big tank. Get the biggest one you can. If you can't find one, order one from me. I can send you a plant 18 inches tall that'll be big.
They grow fast, though.
They do grow fast, right?
One.
Yeah, and that's what you do. Well, little or big. He's got a big tank, a really big tank. He's got, what was it, a 200-gallon tank?
About, yeah, 180, he
Yeah.
said.
180 gallon tank. That's a really big tank.
I can't even picture it. Having trouble picturing it. I guess it'd be
It's probably 6 foot long,
5 of my 4.
2 to 2.5 feet tall, probably 18 inches to 24 inches front to back. So it's a big tank. And you can handle big plants. I would get a large Amazon sword and a bunch of Vallisneria, Sagittarius, which you probably won't be able to find, and Anacris, and load it up with those. You can always pull plants in later on when they get to growing too thick and do other things. You can change that plant population as you move along with it. But try to get some things in there that are going to make this a really healthy tank and not just a sterile piece that you're going to try to somehow maintain with what you have, a really extremely delicate fish.
Right. The valve will grow quick and spread quickly.
Yeah, and the plants are going to take up a lot of that waste. They also can convert ammonia directly, and they will take up waste in the substrate. Plant them an inch to 2 inches deep. Get them down in there deep enough that they can start to work. The roots of plants create little tiny anaerobic pockets that break down waste. So plants alone can do much of what you need doing. It'll also keep you from going in there and stirring things up because you won't want to expose the roots. But those plants will do a lot better job of keeping that substrate clean than you can with a siphon. So I would do those couple of things and see if you can't stave off some catastrophe.
You have, did you see J Dog's question at the very beginning?
Yeah, I did. He wanted to know about temperature. I thought that was interesting. Does a higher temperature reduce the fish's life? Does it make it live a shorter?
Right.
I don't. My sense is that temperature alone probably does not affect lifespan much one way or the other. What does affect lifespan is water that is radically changing temperature much too quickly. Now think about this for a minute. What's the difference in terms of temperature fluctuation between a 50-gallon tank and a 50,000-gallon pond? The temperature fluctuation in that pond is going to be substantially slower than the temperature fluctuation in that 50-gallon tank. That tank can change 5 degrees in an hour. In a pond, it can't. It's far too diffused. Also, in a tank, you have thermoclines. You have gradations of temperature. In a tank, you don't. It's all the same temperature, particularly if you have some kind of something moving water around, a bubbler or a pump or a filter or something. Mm-hmm. Then you're going to have the same temperature at every level, so the fish can't go from one temperature to another to try to get warmer if it's a little colder, or try to get colder if it's too hot. You can't self-adjust, in other words. So I recommend heaters in tanks, and I recommend maintaining them at about 82 degrees. Mm-hmm. There are reasonable arguments about that not being a natural environment for fish in the wild, and that's absolutely true. However, unless you can figure out how to maintain a natural wild environment in your tank temperature wise, I recommend you stick to one solid temperature. You can always drop it a couple of degrees in the winter if you want, and kick it up a degree or two in the summer. That's not a bad thing to do. And in fact, to get fish to breed, there are a lot of fish that need that kind of variation. Yeah, go ahead, Cassie.
Oh, on the thermometer, if you're adding a heater and you're recommending 82 degrees, do you want it set so that the water's 82 degrees? Because you might need to set the am I saying that right? Heater a little bit higher. Getting words mixed up.
Well, yeah, the thermometers that have gauges on them are not necessarily accurate. Always check that against the thermometer. So you want to have a thermometer in the tank and have one in there that you can trust. The little metal ones that have the glass tube in them, that tube tends to move pretty easily, and it can give you a false rating. The solid glass ones that either float or have weights in the bottom to think they're pretty to sink. They're pretty dependable. Even the digital ones that you tape to the outside of the tank, they're pretty constant and effective as well. Although I have noticed that they can break down. I think adding cleaning with chemicals, I think, can mess them up. I've noticed some that just they'll crap out for whatever reason. They'll get to the point where they're not working right.
Yeah.
Don't know why that is or what that is, but I know they're not nearly as dependable. Probably the best thermometers, unless you can afford a big expensive one, are the little glass ones that either sink or float in the tank. Just try not to break them. That's what happens to them. They get broken. But they're pretty accurate. If you have a second one, put them both in the same tank to check them against each other. And then if there's a difference, where is my heat gun? Thomas took my heat gun. I've got one of those little heat guns that's a laser, shoots a laser and measures temperature. They're pretty inexpensive, and they're very accurate, and they're very inexpensive. So you can do that as well. Just kind of check it.
Heat gun, and I was thinking like something that applies heat.
No, this is a temperature gauge.
Yeah,
well, it looks like a little gun.
I've got it too.
Thomas took it and didn't bring it back. I don't know where it is.
They like to shoot
around
it
here
on the
somewhere.
ground, and then the cats chase it.
Right, exactly.
And I go, you guys,
They're wonderful.
you're going to
They're
kill them.
wonderful toys. Yes, absolutely. I don't see it. It's probably out in the shop somewhere.
I could run and get mine if you really would like to show it off. I just
if it won't take a minute, I don't want to.
Yeah, I'll be back in just like 30 seconds. Let me see.
She's such an organized housekeeper. I'm sure she knows exactly where every single thing is. Lee is Fish and Tactics is asking where Lee is. He has to take his wife to work and pick her up. And this time of day, he's picking her up.
All right. It was in the spot I had it in, luckily.
Well, there it is. Sure enough. Yeah. They're real handy and real effective. Press the button on it and show us.
I'm taking the temperature of that guy. That says 70.
There it is, 70.5. Sure enough.
A little chilly.
She keeps her house a little cool, doesn't she?
I heated it up to 71, but the problem is when the heater turns on, I mean, it gets hot no matter what the house temperature is.
All right, yeah.
So I shut it down.
Getting some coffee here.
But yeah, I try to keep this in the same spot so I know where it is, but then the kids go grab it and then I walk off with it and I don't know.
You have cats, so that makes it even more exciting.
You're probably like, your Thomas might be like my kids and they walk off with the.
I know, exactly.
And you're like, where is it when you need it?
Exactly. Of Green Machine in Sweden says they got their first snow today. And he's happy about that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That seems a little late for
Instead
first snow.
Yeah.
We've been getting all kinds of snow here in the States for a while. You got a super chat just now
Oh, nice.
from Misfit. Thank you, Misfit.
Let me see if I can find that. That's got to be it right
Good
there.
morning,
Wow.
Father Fish and friends.
Well, nice. Thank you so much, Misfit. Good morning, Father Fish and friends. I'm my way from Ohio to Alabama to build a pond for a customer. Going to be stopping by every fish store I find.
Wow.
Got to be loads of fun. Hope everyone as well. That sounds great. I would love to be riding along with you. That'll be great fun. And you're going to build a pond for a customer. I love ponds. Ponds are absolutely wonderful. I don't think there's much more that's more fun than a pond. And the better you can build it, the more you can do with it. Boy, the more fun it is. Oh, Joey's here. Hi, Joey.
Joey just popped in. Brienne is telling Joey that her female betta has eggs.
Now, what does that mean exactly? Does that mean that they have spawned and their eggs in a nest, or does it mean that the female has an egg spot?
I think she means it looks eggy. Probably,
So the female has an egg spot.
Probably ready to go. She was talking about it earlier.
Yeah, I talked to her yesterday about egg spots and what that is, and she was to look out for a female with an egg spot.
They're a little startling if you've never seen one before. It's like, what is that?
Right.
And then it's like, why is my female getting like fatter like every now and then? I didn't know that their size changed. I thought maybe it was bloat. And then and then you mentioned that, and I was like, oh, so she just has eggs and she's ready to lay them.
Somebody had a comment here.
You've got a couple.
Yeah, go ahead.
Fish had one.
Pick one out. Go ahead and read it.
All right. Well, the next one I had was at 9:02, and Fantastic Fish Friends says, I just spent the night removing, boiling, and cleaning the gravel from one of my 75-gallon tanks that had a bad trumpet snail invasion.
Right. I saw that.
Okay.
I can appreciate you doing that and why you did it. I would never, ever, ever do such a thing. Absolutely never. Because you not only got rid of those snails, you got rid of every bit of live bacteria that was on that gravel, which probably was extremely substantial. If it came out of an aged tank, you're now at the point where you're starting all over again. Bacteria is only a bad thing when it gets out of control. And it gets out of control when there is an excess of nutrition in the tank. And by nutrition, I mean anything organic that's laying there deteriorating. Any kind of fish food, dead fish, anything like that. That's exactly what happens with Malaysian trumpet snails. Malaysian trumpet snails are one of the healthiest, most important indicators that you can have in your fish tank. When they start multiplying and they get out of control, it's because you have done something wrong. And what you have done wrong is overfeed your fish. You put so much food in there that their population is exploding. Now, that is actually saving your tank from catastrophe. Far from being a bad thing, it's something you need to be thankful for that you have these animals living in there that can protect the tank from your predations, if you will, from your failure to really understand what's going on. A little later today, we're going to be doing a video, and it's going to be controversial, it's going to be emotional, it's going to be something very disturbing. We have a tank. We have a tank here, a very old tank, that someone dumped a substantial amount of food in, and we didn't catch it for an extended period of time. And it has gone remarkably foul. So we're going to be getting into that. We're going to be showing it. We're going to be looking at it, and we're going to be cleaning it up. So hopefully that video will be out by tomorrow, and we'll be able to show you how we deal with the catastrophe that happens. What we're not going to do is pull everything out and boil it. We're not going to do that because there's 10 years worth of life in that tank that we want to preserve. But we've got to get rid of all this excess nutrition and all of the slime algae and all of the bacteria that's built up in there. That will eventually choke everything out.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, the fish are not sick and dying yet. So we'll be getting on that. We'll be videoing it. We're going to show exactly what it is and how to deal with it. So a little warning about that. I think it'll be something interesting, but also something very disturbing. So kind of keep an eye.
Around the time that Thomas was making those videos about how to feed and what to feed your fish?
No. This is much more recent than that.
Oh.
It happened over the last probably 2 weeks to a month. It's been going on for at least 2 weeks. And I don't know whether it was some child who threw a handful of food in there. That's a distinct possibility. Or whether it was somebody who just took a notion to feed every day. There's nobody here who would do that, but I just don't know. I don't know how it happened. I know it did happen because I saw it. I looked at it for the first time Tuesday. I noticed it Tuesday. And I immediately talked to the staff and asked them. They didn't know anything about it. So it's a good chance a child found some food and threw a whole bunch in there. Could have dumped a can in. It's kind of the way it goes. Yeah, and it could have happened a week or more ago. Could have happened a while back because it's obviously been going on for a while. So anyway, keep an eye out for that. I think it'll be interesting. It's noteworthy. It's something I don't like to show, but absolutely need to because it'll be a demonstration of what you can do when things go really bad. And this is really bad.
So did you lose fish? Did I hear that or did I miss it?
No, they're fine. They look okay. I have some natives in there, golden top minnows primarily.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that you didn't lose anybody.
Yeah, I was looking at them this morning and they look okay. I don't see any sores on them or bacterial infection or whatever. So hopefully the fish are okay.
Rohan had a couple suggestions about trying to get rid of your trumpet snails. He suggested making a trap and also feeding less.
Yeah, the feeding less is the key. If you do that, the numbers will drop right back down again. If they don't have a substantial amount of food to eat, they'll just go down in there. They'll either die off or they'll just stay dormant in the bottom as little teeny tiny snails. They won't grow much. They'll just kind of stay there until the next catastrophe. And then they'll come up again. But the fact, don't get paranoid about snails. There are a couple of types of snails that are notorious plant eaters. Apples and apple snails, for one, are notorious plant eaters. They're not commonly available. There is a very large, flat, spiral snail that's also a notorious plant eater. They get quite big and they're multicolored, like white and black and brown. Not a particularly pretty fish, but dramatic in size. Another notorious plant eater. You want to avoid those. But the Malaysian trumpet snails, nearite snails, mystery snails, those are all perfectly healthy, good snails to have in your tank. And they will help keep it clean, and they will save you from that overfeeding catastrophe. They'll go a long way toward helping with that. They're by and large real friends. They're an effective cleanup crew. Uh, I know the trauma that can be created when you suddenly see 1,000 Malaysian trumpet snails wringing the entire tank an inch or two up off the sand and working their way up the glass. It can create panic, and often does. But they are not the problem. They are never the problem. And getting rid of them will only exacerbate the real problem, which is you putting far more food in the tank than is required. It is the easiest thing in the world to do. Everybody does it. It's hard to get control of because we want our fish to be healthy and we think they are mammals, and they're not. They do not have the same kind of digestive system that mammals do. They do not need to eat every day or even every 2 or 3 days. They do not. They're perfectly happy to eat once a week or once a month. They will pick. They will go around and pick. They'll find little bits of algae. They'll find little animals growing in the sand. They'll find all kinds of food in a healthy, balanced tank that you can't even see, that is nurturing to little fish. No matter how much food you feed, no matter how little food you feed to tiny fish, it's too much. Let me say that again. You cannot underfeed a small fish in a tank that's been set up for at least a month or two, because by then it will be producing other forms of life, like microscopic animals in the bottom and the substrate that little tiny fish eat. They can see them, you can't. Like little spots of algae, they can see it, you can't. That's their food. That's what the tank is creating for them to eat. That's what the balance is. You throw that balance out by feeding. Now, you can give a little bit, but make sure it is the tiniest amount you can possibly imagine. Don't be afraid to underfeed your fish. Be afraid to overfeed your fish. Be very afraid. That is precisely what kills fish. Precisely. Nothing else. You may wind up with a temperature problem that'll kill fish. That might happen rarely, if ever. You can very easily create an excess nutrition in your tank that will cause excessive bacteria to blossom, that will burn up oxygen in the tank, that will create a crash, a catastrophe in which one fish will die. It'll deteriorate and create more bacteria, creating a cascade effect in which everything dies. And it all starts with putting too much food in the tank. And it happens all the time, especially with new hobbyists, especially with new tanks. In a brand new tank, I don't feed anything for at least a week to give that tank a chance to build up some nitrifying bacteria so it can deal with some of the waste like the ammonia, to give that substrate a chance to build up some life forms so it can provide nutrition and be taking care of excess nutrition, uh, like the food you put in. You're feeding not just the fish, you're feeding microscopic life. If you try to keep that sterile, you're preventing the very thing that is making it possible for your tank to achieve balance, thereby creating a very realistic likelihood that your tank will crash. Have I said enough about that? I feel like I can't ever say enough about that. It is the single most common and the single most horrific problem that fish keepers have, not just brand new fish keepers. I do it. I've done it. I have in the last year I probably have fouled 2 or 3 tanks with excessive feeding. It is an easy thing to do. You have to be on your guard. Anytime you're putting food in the tank, you're running the risk of killing your fish. Food is not your friend, it is your enemy. Use it sparingly and judiciously. Don't read the label, it'll give you bad advice. All right, where are we? What do you got? Anything else here?
I have a question speaking of food.
Yes.
So I got this crab cuisine because I was looking for like a shrimp pellet, and I ordered this on Amazon so I could feed my shrimp. And it's supposed to help them with their shell development. And it recommends 1 to 4 of these. They're fast sinking. 1 to 4 twice a day. Care should be taken to avoid overfeeding, though, and always removing uneaten food after the feeding period, whatever that is.
Right, whatever that is. The feeding period now with shrimp it's a little different because they're tiny and they're slow eaters.
And they're still
What I would do is crush up one of those pellets
okay.
and put that in, just one, crushed. That way they'll be able to eat the whole thing, and they're not going to sit there chewing on it for hours.
Let me show you what one
Down.
of these looks like. So they're really small.
Yeah, yeah, I would do that. I would get a crushed one, maybe 2. How many shrimp are in the tank?
So I put one in. Sorry, they're gone. I put one in this morning, I think, and
Yeah.
it's hard to tell, but the shrimp didn't go to it. Only the snails are munching on it.
Right. So it doesn't mean food to them, which probably means
they don't.
It probably means that they're getting a lot of food already.
I was hoping it would help them, with their calcium and help them to molt. But
crush one up, or a couple of them.
Okay.
How many shrimp are in there?
In that one, I've only counted 2 babies so far. It's really hard to see though.
That's all babies.
And 1 amano. I lost 2 amano, unfortunately. I don't know why. I added the peel from a shrimp, and I washed that off and put that in there and left it. and the snails consumed it. The shrimp never went to it to eat it. And then like a couple of days later or so, I noticed one amano dead. And then like the next day, another amano died. So
Yeah.
there's one left in there and 2 babies.
Well, 1/10 of one of those little tiny pellets would certainly be more than enough to feed 2 baby shrimp.
Yeah.
So even one, the fact that you have snails in there is going to help you deal with the overfeeding problem. But try crushing one up and
Okay.
putting the tiny bits in it. More a micro and grind it in a mortar and pestle if you can. I mean, get it really fine, and then put that very fine powder in.
The one thing I wanted to mention though was I tried to feed the 5 shrimp with, like, I put 2 of these in the 20-gallon that I have 5 ghost shrimp in, and you kind of have to knock it down. So they both fell down, and the one fell down on top of the plant that was there, and the betta fish that I have in there went and ate it. Is it bad for betta fish to eat?
No, not bad at all. No, and the bettas cannot digest vegetable matter. They can digest any kind of. They're a strict insectivore, and the crab, shrimp, those kinds of things are essentially insects. So their protein, the betta can digest that. So it's not a bad food for a betta at all. And they even eating vegetable matter. A betta eating vegetable matter simply won't be able to digest it. It'll just poop it out as waste.
I was more worried about the size of the pellet, like choking him.
No, I don't think so. It'll break down. He'll soften it before he's not going to let it choke him.
I'm going, oh God, I'm going to kill my betta because he ate that thing.
No, I don't think that'll happen. But grind it up before you put it in.
Okay, I'll do
You
that.
got tiny little critters there, and they'll do better with very, very tiny kind of a powder. All right, what else have we got here? What are you seeing?
Well, earlier on, somebody was asking about like what plants you might suggest for their shell dweller tank.
Plants for shell dweller.
He didn't think he was going to add a lot of plants to that tank.
Whatever you can get to grow. I mean, it doesn't really matter. There are very few native plants in their natural environment, so they're not a fish that normally is in a relationship with plants. Algae, yes, there's lots of algae. The lakes, as the lakes get deeper, there are fewer and fewer plants that grow. Plants need to be relatively close to the top of the water column in order to get adequate light to do photosynthesis. So you don't find plants growing in any body of water much below 6 feet or so. They just don't. They don't. Even things like lilies that send up leaves to the top. If you have them in a pond that has deep water, they will thrive all around the edge, and the center of it will be empty. It'll be devoid of plants. They just can't grow in deep water.
Right.
And when we're talking about the rift lakes, there's very little shallow water. It goes deep fast, and it's mainly rock. So you don't get a lot of plants living in that. What you get is a lot of algae growing on those rocks. And many of these fish, particularly the umbonas, have actually developed different dentition, different tooth formations in order to be able to scrape different algae off of the rocks. Some fish will scrape one algae and not another. Others will scrape that other algae and not the first one. So they feed on different aspects of the plant life, but the plant life is pretty exclusively attached algae. And again, it's because those things, those lakes get pretty deep. You do, even at a given depth, you don't get algae anymore. I mean, you get down to around 10 feet, there's no algae down there. There's not enough light
Unless
to be
it's salt water.
Pardon, even in salt water. Yeah, even in salt water. Yeah, that most of my observations about that have been in salt water, and you never find rooted plants in salt water below about 5 feet. I mean, I grew up on the Chesapeake Bay in a creek, living in a creek, and there was huge plant life, but it only went out to about the 5 foot depth. After that, when it dropped off into the channel, there were never plants growing there. Even though the water was pretty clear back then, it was not clear enough for the light to be able to penetrate. And in fact, even the clearest light can't penetrate water beyond a certain depth.
Yeah.
The clearest water, yeah.
Yes. Let's see here. Somebody has asked about plant suggestions with cichlids, and we've answered that a couple times, but can you mention it again today? Because someone was asking.
Are you creaming?
Thomas here?
No, not yet. I just put my dolly in your van.
Oh, wonderful.
For
Okay.
later.
Okay.
I
Thank
didn't
you.
want to carry it around all day.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I missed what you were saying.
Oh, someone was asking about plant suggestions again for keeping cichlids with plants. What, if any, could be used? I think.
Well, if you look at that last tank the last video we did, observing your fish, I think it's called.
Okay.
You'll notice that's a 200-gallon tank with a lot of fish in it, particularly a lot of umbunas, but also a lot of Central Americans and a few South Americans, all of which are more aggressive, nearly all of which are more aggressive fish. And it's heavily planted. Now, I've had that heavily planted for probably 5 years or so with that kind of fish in it. I don't get plants being chewed up. I really don't. And I'm not overfeeding as a way of compensating for that. If anything, I'm underfeeding. The fish, maybe it's because they have the utmost respect for Father Fish. I don't know. But they don't eat the plants. There are plants that they'll eat. I don't put those kinds of plants in there. And frankly, like Anacharis. Anacharis would be a plant that any fish that's at all a vegetarian would chomp down on. It tastes good. It's soft. It's easy to eat. I don't put kabamba in there for the same reason. I don't put soft plants in. I put hard plants in. Plants like Vallisneria, like Ledwigia, like sword plants.
So Bacopa would be good.
Yeah, Bacopa, right.
And
Baby tears would not. You would not do baby tears in there.
No.
Soft plants I would not put in with Africans because they will eat them because it's good and tasty food.
Okay.
But they're not going to chow down on an Amazon sword.
Okay. Yeah, I think you mentioned that like waxier like plants that are thicker leaves, harder.
Yeah, now there's something else that I find really interesting. The Aponogetans, the bulb plants. These are African rainforest plants that that are seasonal. They occur in rain pools and rain ponds, rain puddles. In the rainy season, there are ponds that'll fill up with water, and that water will stay in them for 6, 8 months of the year, maybe longer. Um, and there are plants that grow in that. These are bulb plants that grow huge, enormous, beautiful, beautiful leafing plants. They're mostly rather delicate, rather thin, almost paper thin. Some of them are fine, like the Madagascar lace, an extremely fine plant. The ulvaceous bulbs, very fine, beautiful, beautiful plants. I have not noticed them. I've had them in with voracious snail plant eaters, and they have not touched the Aponogeton. I've had them in with fish that eat plants, and they have not touched the Aponogeton. I find that very interesting.
Yeah.
It seems to me that the Aponogeton is doing something to protect itself from predation, from the predation at least of snails and fish, if not of other critters. I've actually never noticed one of the ulvaceous bulbs, the leaves, being eaten. I have noticed the bulb being eaten. I've noticed that the growing tip will occasionally be eaten. If I don't have that protected, fish will pick at that. They'll actually kill the growing tip and kill the bulb. But the leaves, I haven't seen it happen. We need to take a break for a minute or two, and we'll be back and have more fun. Where is a yippee? I'll tell you what, let's just do this. We're going to put a tune on here, if I can get it to come up. Let's see.
Well, interesting enough, while you're looking for that, Betta Days said that the angelfish love duckweed, and I wasn't aware of that. The angelfish will eat duckweed.
That's interesting, yeah. Duckweed is really a great food for a lot of fish. I feed it like goldfish. I mean, that's all I feed them is duckweed. And there are a lot of other fish. Yeah, they love it. Yeah, there are a lot of other fish that look like duckweed as well. We're going to take a break right now. We'll be back in about 5 minutes.
Let's talk about fish, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish. Fish.
Hi there. We're back.
Oh, hello. Sorry.
All right.
I try to mute in case that music doesn't come good through my speakers and back.
Oh my. Okay, let's see. Let me get back over to YouTube here. Do you have anything you're looking at right now?
I had something before the break from Brandon.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on a deep sand bed and a saltwater tank fatherfish?
Absolutely. My first real learning experience about deep substrates was with saltwater, and the source of my early education on the nature of deep substrates was a facility that I think no longer exists. And I'm sitting here struggling, trying to remember the name of it. It's a facility that raised corals, mostly corals, located on a thermal vent in Idaho. And the name will come to me in a minute. It's just not registering right now. But what they discovered is that the mud from various places around the world, saltwater places, most especially mangrove forests, contain such a wide variety of bacteria that was otherwise not available. And they brought that in and established systems with those bacteria. They sold a product that they called Miracle Mud. Miracle Mud that contained lots of different kinds of bacteria that was laid in the tank with a sand cap over it. Golly, what can the name of it come to me? I'll think about when I'm not thinking about it. In any case, what they were seeking to duplicate was was natural systems. And they found that by doing that, they had a tremendously more effective growth rate with their corals than they did otherwise. They taught that for a number of years, taught that system. There are some aquaculturists who adapted that system to their own their own fish room. I was one of the few early people to bring it over from salt to freshwater and begin using it effectively in freshwater. And it was really the influence of Diana Wallstead's early work 20 years ago on using dirt in the tank that gave me the confidence to be able to do what I had done as a child, not necessarily effectively. I mean, as a young man, I had some dirted tanks, but I wasn't nearly as effective with it because I really didn't understand what I was doing. Now, Wallstead dropped the ball, frankly, 20 years ago when she did not cap the dirt. She put gravel on it to hold it down, but didn't cap it. And due to a recent comment she made in response to my sand capping, it's clear to me she never did really look into the anaerobics of maintaining a deep substrate system. More's the pity. I've challenged her to do that. We'll see if she does, or if I simply get a cold shoulder, let's say.
It would be interesting to see you two debate that, like her method.
Yeah,
likes her way, and you guys explain them to each other.
Well, she responded to one of my videos a couple of weeks ago, saying that that she was shocked that I was capping dirt. That caused, in her words, the possibility of oxygen not being able to permeate into the dirt. And I responded to her, I hope graciously, because I have tremendous admiration for what she did with her research and for bringing dirt into the aquarium, but saying that my very intent was to create an anaerobic layer in the bottom of that in the dirt in order to prevent oxygen by putting the sand in to prevent oxygen from permeating into it in order to break down waste and create an environment in which waste broke down into its component parts such that plants could take it up. Now, that is my rationale and my explanation of what's happening. In point of fact, it's not an understanding that is necessarily based on any kind of true science. It's based on my experience and my best efforts to understand what's happening. I am wide open to a better interpretation than I've been able to give it of what's actually going on. What I insist upon is that whatever it is that's happening, it very clearly and very obviously is effective. It very clearly works because I have tanks that are 10 years old that have been set up this way, and they are today very productive tanks and very healthy tanks. So I'm more than anxious to have this conversation and to pursue the matter because I believe we're doing something. I know we're doing something that is saving the hobby for countless hobbyists who have had nothing but failure and now all of a sudden are succeeding. So I'll leave it at that for the moment in the hope that this conversation will be picked up by people who violently disagree with it, because I want to have that conversation. And I know there are those. I know they're out there. I've run into a few of them, and they're rather high and mighty, some of them. I'm not talking about Wallstead. I'm talking about some other people who consider themselves the final authority on planted tanks.
Right. Well, you also mentioned there's more than one way, to have success. So it would be interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Absolutely. This is one way. And it's a way that works. It's a way that's effective. It's a way that helps brand new people succeed without spending an inordinate amount of money and without having their hand in it day after day after day, adding this and adding that and so forth.
Right. And my gravel, the suggestion at the beginning of the video with doing 4 to 5 inches of gravel, that works, but I couldn't do plants in that tank. So with the gravel.
So it really doesn't work.
I mean, rooted plants. I could do Anubias and Java fern, but like if I wanted to get really into doing like a planted aquarium, which is why I came to you. Trying to figure out how to do the planted aquarium.
Yeah. Right. Let's see.
So
Somebody's saying we need a round table video of Father Fish, Wallstead, and Novak. Seems to be a lot of similarities between Novak's plenum and my deep substrate. Perhaps so.
yeah,
I've tried to follow Novak, and frankly, I get lost.
I don't follow Novak really.
Yeah.
The one I like better is Mr. Amano. I'd like to see you Wallstead in Amano.
Wouldn't that be fun to bring him back? That was a great
difference between you and Amano, unless you guys are very similar. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a real blow when he died a couple of years ago. Was that 2 years ago?
Yeah, he always just tried to recreate nature.
Yeah, it's like 58. Yeah, and that was a real inspiration for me too, because that's exactly what he did. Businesses like the Green Machine also picked up on that. Now, the thing about Amano, he was a great capitalist. He was able to make money doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because he packaged up every one of those little elements. I have like 14 different elements. He packaged them individually and sold them individually as supplements for setting up that initial deep substrate tank. I don't know whether he used dirt. I don't know that he did. No, he did not. He used his own mixture, his own Amano substrate. He did not use dirt, so that was a difference. But he might have. He could have. He could easily, but he would not have been able to sell it. And everything he did had a market price on it. I mean, he became a very wealthy man by selling every single detail of finding a way to market every single detail of what he did. He was an absolute genius in that respect. And beyond that, in his ability to create the most astounding planted environments. And he was a photographer. He wasn't an aquaculturist. He was a photographer who took his photography underwater and began researching and looking at that and developed a whole approach to maintaining planted tanks that really no one had broken down into its particulate parts prior to that. So he was certainly a major figure in creating natural environments.
And still is.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
I don't know much about him other than just seeing the aquariums he's left behind for the public to go and view.
Oh, I know. Let's see. There are a few. What's he talking about? Seaweeds.
Rohan wanted to know if there's any like plants that are like rooted plants in salt water. And I
Well, yeah, John Cox was just commenting on that. There are a lot of rooted plants like in bays. You don't find them so much in open water like oceans or in the Gulf. You do find them in bays in shallow water. There are a lot of rooted plants. There's one called turtle grass. There are a number of them that have roots that grow in the sand beds in those in those areas. Um, the plants that grow in the Gulf in oceans, which are in relatively shallow water, are all plants that have um, roots that adhere to rocks. They don't. They're not nurturing roots. They're not pulling nutrition up. They're anchors, like epiphytes. They're a plant that attaches itself to something like an orchid. They attach to a rock and they take their nutrition then out of the water column. When you get down into deeper water or ocean water, you don't find rooted plants.
Yeah, I was thinking that they would help.
Mainly because they can't survive, because that substrate through wave action alone is being whipped up all the time. They wouldn't be able to grow. These little guys start as a single cell attached to a rock, and they grow from there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, kelp came to mind in particular. I'm not sure if that's more like Anubias, how it grows, like on top of rocks. I don't know.
I don't know either. I think it is. I don't believe it has roots. I believe it's growing attached to a hard substrate.
Yeah, I think most saltwater plants just attach to like a substrate and rocks and dead corals.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of the plants that you speak of. So.
Well, on the bay side, you'll find plants growing along the shoreline, out in 3, 4, 5 feet of water. Turtle grass or eel grass is one of the most common ones, and there are others. There are also other kinds of grasses that are growing in that same environment that are growing attached to hardscape, to oyster shells even.
Yeah.
Caulerpa's one. I've got caulerpa, great caulerpa going absolutely nuts in my saltwater tanks right now. It's virtually taking over. It's growing so well, which says to me I've got high nitrates in there and they're consuming the nitrates. So I'm letting it go for the most part to try to get that under control.
Somebody, Butcher's Block, was asking earlier how to get rid of something that looks like white algae. And I'm not familiar with algae that might be white.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. And I've seen it, not often, not much. My philosophy is unless it becomes substantially invasive, to leave it alone, because it's there for a reason. It's there dealing with the condition in the water column. If it becomes invasive, if it starts taking over, then crop it back, if you will. Kind of reduce its volume so it doesn't suffocate other things. But by and large, if it's a growing, I'm not talking about bacteria that are taking over and destroying the tank. I'm talking about plants or plant-like creatures that are growing in your tank. Don't be afraid of them. Control them if need be, so they don't take over. But don't be afraid of them. Excuse me, Father Fish. What else?
And
Chevy Fish is saying, be careful when Callirpa goes asexual. It grows like gangbusters, but after it reproduces, it crashes. Yes, it does. That's true. It can fill the tank and then die and just foul everything.
yeah,
Uh, although I've noticed that when plants die out, they don't really foul the water. You don't get bacteria blooms. What you get is a deterioration of the plant that will, if you've got deep substratals, will work its way into that. I don't leave it in there, but I also don't notice that it creates a harmful condition in the tank. So I do know that happens. I've had it happen where a huge bloom of plants will exhaust the resources that caused it to bloom and cascade die. It'll just melt. I usually pull that out because it's slimy and nasty. But I've not noticed that it ever kills fish or creates a particularly toxic condition in the tank the way rotting flesh would. The rotting plants and rotting flesh have are very different characteristics in a tank.
yeah. Chevy Fish mentioned GARF, geothermal aquaculture.
Yes, thank you,
What's that
Chevy.
really?
Absolutely, that's right. GARF, the Geothermal Research Foundation, Geothermal Aquatic Research Foundation. Right.
That's the one I was trying to remember, but I thought you were talking about, and I couldn't remember either.
I have mentioned it before. Yeah,
I don't
and I don't.
even know.
I can't find them online anymore, so I don't know whether they still exist or not. I know that it was being run by a couple, of which the wife was really the hands-on, and the husband was kind of the mechanic, and she died. And I think he tried to hold on for a while, but then lately, the last few years, I haven't been able to find them online. If
They
anyone,
are there. It just seems like it's not being maintained. If you go to garf.org.
nothing current.
No, it looks like it was started at the beginning of the internet.
Yeah, it's old stuff. It's been years. It's been easily 10 years since they were really very active. But they were just did fundamental work. Not everybody appreciated it. Not everybody was involved with it. It was pretty limited. But those people who were are thriving today. One of these days, we'll get to visit Brian Green's farm once COVID is done and his grandson has achieved some medical stability. We'll try to get over there and visit his coral farm. He lives very close to me and is a wonderful man, Brian Green, Green Aquaculture. We just can't get in there right now because of various problems that we and he have no control over.
You have a question from a Johan at 10:15.
Okay, what's he saying? Go ahead.
Basically asking about can you put fish in right away to a deep substrate tank, or do you need to let it settle for a month or two?
A day or so, just a day or so. Let it settle, make sure everything's working and settled, and then you can put the fish in right away. Again, do not feed those fish any substantial amount of food at all. Very, 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 very tiny, tiny, tiny amounts of food. If you do more than that, you will create problems. You'll create bacterial problems. Just don't do it. In time, it'll build up. and it'll be able to handle it. You've got to allow the biological system to develop in order to be able to handle the biological load of having more and more fish in that environment. Plants too, for that matter, but primarily fish and the food you feed them. Live food is always best for fish, always. It's not always possible to do it. So, but anytime you put a dead food in for fish, you run the risk of polluting the tank.
I might need to.
John C is saying hydrogen sulfide kills fish. If you stirred a deep gravel tank that was not gravel fact, it released this gas in enough quantity. John, I'm not finding the rest of his statement here. Yeah, absolutely. I do not recommend you stir up a deep substrate. You not only are ruining what's growing down there, but you run the risk of fouling the tank because you're releasing anaerobics, whatever those anaerobics are, into an aerobic environment in which they must die. They will die. It's why buying bags of live sand is ridiculous. Sand that's in a bag is not live sand. It is dead sand. That is to say, it's anaerobic. It has burned up all of the available oxygen and it's become anaerobic. Bacteria lives in both environments, but it's one or the other, not both. It lives either in an anaerobic environment or in an aerobic environment. When you introduce anaerobic bacteria to an aerobic environment, it dies. Similarly, you introduce aerobic bacteria to an anaerobic environment and it dies. They're different kinds of bacteria that live in different kinds of environments. And that's what you're maintaining. You're maintaining two very different kinds of environment in your tank. And that's the genius of the deep sand, of the 2 inches of sand, that it's able to create that semi-permeable barrier that prevents, that allows, I should say, anaerobics and aerobics to exist in the same general environment, much as does nature.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had to step away, so I kind of missed the start of that.
Right. Yeah. One of these days, I'll get down to the local lake, abolished, and film a shoal of bream, tench, or carp feeding, and the streams of bubbles coming up as they root about. Amen to that. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he went on to say that as they're feeding, the bubbles just go through their gills.
Anubias is epiphytic. It is indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Green Machine is saying hydrogen sulfate doesn't form in a healthy tank. There are all manner of fear. What's the word I want to use? Fear addicts, I guess, who raise all kinds of horrors at the thought of creating a deep substrate that's anaerobic, as though anaerobics were the enemy of all life. Whereas, in fact, anaerobics is the foundation of all life. Without anaerobics, there is no life.
You're reminding me of a Star Trek episode now.
Really?
Yeah, they talk about that being like the beginning of life.
Well, life doesn't thrive on rocks. It thrives on life. It is the deterioration of living matter that provides the nutrition, the sustenance for living matter. It's not rocks that feed plants. It's broken down plants and animal life and waste products that feed plants.
Abolished Aquatics has a question for you about the nutrient analysis on duckweed.
I have no idea. No idea. All right. How are we doing time-wise here? What is
We're at 10:31.
10:31? Yeah, we're
Can you guys hit the likes if you haven't already?
please.
We're doing good on likes today. And we've got 75 watching and 60
New
likes.
people in today. Let me
The likes if you haven't already.
please. Let me go back and look at some of this chat. Well, where'd it go? Top chat. How about top live chat? Let's see. I see the first one I see that does not have a wrench is Cassie B. So we will give her her wrench back again.
Chevy says it happened.
No,
to her.
she does all the time. Luke Kennedy, welcome, welcome. Who else has been here a little while who doesn't have a wrench?
NA1, do you?
I'm going back up. Johan Martinson, do you put fish in a deep substrate tank directly, or do you take? Yeah, well, you did this one, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, right away, right away.
Right, and I believe it's
Anyone to you? David B. at a premium price too. I don't. These are all new names to me. We need a roundtable video. That was interesting. Let's give David a wrench. That's just a very astute kind of comment. Appreciate that. Cassie B. Butcher's Block and Patriots should have a wrench. Add moderator. Welcome, Butcher's Block and Patriots. I'm going to go get me some snails and see if they eat it up. Right, they will indeed. Butcher's Block. Got a bunch of comments there. Okay, I'm as far up as this will allow me to go.
and
Thank you, everyone, for plugging in.
Oh,
I appreciate you all.
just,
Those of you who are new, who do not have a wrench, come on back. You'll get one. You know, I think Joey will be here tomorrow, and she'll be most anxious to help with that. Mary is playing taxi driver. She's taking her her grandchildren to school and back every day, so she hasn't been able to be here with us, but it has been some in the chat. So
I
we wish
just
her well. And
lights up to Mary too, and she's going to hopefully get them alive and well on Saturday.
oh, wonderful! That's
I hope I did a good job packaging them and
lovely, lovely. That's great. So let's see if we can get a little tune up here, and we'll just carry on from where we were. Thank you all so much. God bless. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. On the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 6 in the evening, our time. See you all later. Bye for now.